So Nicola, here it is.
Yay!
Our new book, The Star Web.
It does look very beautiful, thanks to you. I love that cover. I totally love that cover.
Well, memories. Very
Yes.
funny thing. So I just wanted to ask, do you remember the first time you get an idea to do a book together?
Well, it was kind of like this, you know, just kind of sitting around chatting and looking through your gorgeous little sketchbooks, and almost every one of the images in these books made me think, wow, I could write something to go with that. That there's a conversation happening between the characters, or just some beginning of a story that suggested itself from looking at the pictures. And I just immediately wanted to write things to go with them. And I think I said to you, oh, can I write things to go with some of these? Can I pick some of these and just write things to go with them? And that's how it began, as kind of naturally and conversationally as that.
I remember that. I remember when you asked for it. And in fact, I kind of remember we were walking in Edinburgh or something, down the stairs or something. And I just thought, it sounds great, but of course it's not going to happen. You know, it's not ever happen. And it did happen. And I'm so glad we did that. And also, I feel very, the thing I feel about the book, it's one of my probably most important books so far. I think I feel about it as if it was kind of record in time and record our friendship as well. I feel it's so much in it. I really, really enjoy working on the book.
Yeah, I feel for me too that it's an emotional and creative milestone. Because of all the books I've done, I think I'm more excited and delighted with this book than anything else. You know, for the same reason that it's a record of our friendship, but also because it's the whole process of it was purely creative and just fun, you know. Writing to your images felt like it took all the pressure off me to come up with original ideas. I didn't have to do that. I just had to have a conversation with these images, and that felt absolutely like playing. And you know, that's the best of creativity, isn't it? You're doing your best work when you're in that play space, when you're absolutely in the moment and not worrying about it, not thinking too hard about it. It's just coming out of you, and that's what this book has been for me, and it's just been the most delightful experience. I've loved it, loved it, loved it.
And another thing, what was actually the very first picture our very first poem you wrote for the book?
Okay, the very first was Queen of the Fishes, this one. So there's the beautiful image. And the thing that was really different about this for me was that very often when I'm writing about animals, I'm writing non-fiction. So even if I'm writing a poem, it has to have some sort of factual content to it. And what was really, really different about this, and totally liberating for me, is that this image was very obviously a fantasy, something from a whole other realm of creativity and a whole other realm of writing. And so when I wrote this, and also I was writing in rhyme, which I love playing with, and I'm not very often allowed to play with, it just was totally liberating. And it kind of opened a door for me for the whole of the rest of the book and all the other things that I subsequently wrote. So what was the first picture that you did for the book?
Well, actually, this was the very last one.
Oh no, really?
Well, I had so many versions and I couldn't get it right. I was really, really trying hard. I'm often trying to avoid drawing people. I'm really struggling with people.
But she's so great. I love her.
It took me a long time, but for the same reason, actually, for not being very comfortable with drawing people, I started with this picture, and again I did lots of versions. But at the same time, I love the poem. It's so much in it, and the message of the text as well. And so I felt very strong about this poem, and I really enjoyed it. But this was the very first one I did for the book.
I think that's a brilliant, brilliant example of of the way that your work has inspired me. Because when I saw the sketch of this, immediately there was something, they've always been the same distance apart, these two characters, but you can see that there is a tension, there is a conversation between them, and immediately it suggested a conversation. But the other thing about it is that has got, I know I've seen the various versions of that. So the other process that's gone on between us is there has been a real conversation in our work. You know, I wrote to your original sketches and then you tweaked the images to my poems. So it's actually the most collaborative piece of work I've ever done.
Well, I'm also thinking it won't happen this way if we didn't know each other. Yeah. Because when you interpreted my pictures, I'm just thinking it's like if you see into my head. I mean, what you just said about the distance between them, that's what I really like about this picture, the kind of respect for each other in the picture. I mean, these are little details, but just basically, if we didn't know each other, the pictures may be very, very different, and of course the text as well. So I think, anyway.
Yeah, it's a proper deep creative collaboration. Oh, can we do more? I love it. So when I made the selection of images from your sketchbooks to put in the book, were there any of the images that I chose that you thought, oh, I don't know about that, that's too difficult, or I don't want to use that one?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting, because when we worked together in the past, there was, I know you gave me once option that you can take a text out if I don't like it, and when I asked you to, oh, can you, and you said not this one. so
Sorry.
But actually in this book, to be honest, no, and I was wondering why the, you know, that's basically, I've got such a respect for your writing, and I really like your writing, and I find it very inspiring. So it wasn't even an option to think which one I don't want to do. You know, it never crossed my mind. And when I was doing it, when I was working on the book, every single poem, I saw the pictures in my head straight away. And of course, it's because they were also inspired by my drawings. So the link was there from the beginning. You know, there wasn't, you didn't give me a chance not to like something, you know. And on top of it, it's your writing which inspires me. So yes, there were difficult pictures. You know, I mentioned the queen of the ocean, or queen of the fishes. Then that was difficult, but the reason why it was difficult, because I just couldn't illustrate exactly what I wanted. I was failing on the picture, but it wasn't the poem. The poem wasn't the reason. It was just my skill.
But why did you feel you were failing? Because you'd already created that image. That was what inspired me. And
yeah, but in the sketchbook, it's it's a bit different, isn't it? In the sketchbook, to make it to be understood in the book, it's a little bit more. Well, basically, I want it to be clear. I want it to be understood clearly.
And I think that's what you've done. I think you've made. I think the finished images, the difference between the images in the sketchbook and the images in the finished book are, the images in the finished book have got this kind of fantastic clarity of emotion that's just made them more layered, more meaningful, as well as simply more beautiful, because the backgrounds are coloured and not just plain white. And there's such a variety of images too, and I'm really surprised that how well that variety of images has worked, when actually we didn't plan it at all. And it just happened by kind of happy accident, really.
But as I said, it's your fault. The texts were too good, basically.
Okay. Are there any of the images and poems in the book that you feel have gone through a particularly interesting creative journey?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this one, because I did a sketch in my sketchbooks. I know that I did once a picture of the white crow in the Trafalgar Square. And then also in my sketchbook I've got a couple of toucans. And it was very funny to see how you adopted these two sketches. And also it made me think that you really know the sketches, that you really look at it very carefully, and you know the sketchbooks, because I sent you a folder of my sketches. And there was lots of them. It was, I don't know how many, but it's almost 300 or
Hundreds
more.
and hundreds.
Yeah. So the fact that you actually put, instead of the white crow, you put a toucan in the Trafalgar Square or wherever.
I think what happened, it probably wasn't as clever as that.
No.
I think what happened was I misremembered.
Oh, really?
I think what I did was my brain put together the toucan and the white crow and superimposed a toucan over the white crow. And as soon as I thought of toucan in Trafalgar, you know, that lovely sound, then, you know, the white crow was out of the window and gone.
Well, that's so I accuse you of knowing my sketchbook so well, and the opposite is true.
Yes, I just misremembered it. Sorry.
Excellent, love
I could claim to have a photographic memory, but that would just be a lie.
But doing this picture made me very happy because just for the fun of it, and yeah, I really enjoy that. I love pigeons, by the way.
I love pigeons too, and they're all really, really different, and they're really fascinating, ones you see in the city. And what I love about this is that actually it's acquired a meaning about difference and embracing difference, and about welcoming incomers into our culture that I perhaps hadn't thought about when I was writing it, but when I finished it, realised that it was there.
Yeah, that's good.
It's
nice.
beautiful, and I love toucans. I totally love toucans.
So, Nicola, you wanted to say something about this picture?
Okay, so there are quite a lot of fairly mad pictures in our book, but this is probably one of the most extraordinary. So it's a picture of two planets in close proximity with a giant hare sitting about on the top of one of them. There are all sorts of images and poems in our book, and some of them are playful and some of them do have that little bit of information content that is very much my home territory. But this image, I just found this image really, really moving. And I think it's partly because I remembered how much I loved the Saint-Exupéry book, The Little Prince, when I was an adolescent. And this image reminded me of that, and reminded me of the kind of spiritual, philosophical implications of that book. And so I imagined this reflection on other planets and what other planets could be like. But actually, the point is, don't wonder about what other planets are like, because actually we've got a pretty good one here, and our priority really should be to look at it and rejoice in it and take care of it. And I think there's something about that sentiment, that even though that might not have been quite in the front of your mind when you created this image, that's what spoke to me out of it when I saw it in your sketchbook. I mean, what were you thinking about when you did this?
Well, this is actually interesting that you choose this picture, because I love moon.
Yeah.
It's such a mystery about everything. So there are cultures who believe that, you know, people who died live in the moon. It's all been spoiled by the moment when people landed on the moon, I'm afraid.
Nobody there.
Yeah, but I painted actually this picture a couple of times. I did a sketch in my sketchbook, but then I painted it very similar way a couple of times on the big papers, but you probably haven't seen them. But when I saw this text, then I actually repeated the picture. There wasn't much I wanted to change, because and like many of my pictures, I would say I've got no idea what exactly is going on. You know, I like to think about my paintings, my illustrations, like a poem. You have to finish it off yourself. So I like that you choose this one. Actually, it is one of the special one.
Yeah, I mean, basically the contents of this book is Petr Horáček's subconscious.
Interpreted by you.
Yeah.
sit down.
Are you sitting comfortably?
I'm sitting comfortable,
Okay,
and off you go.
then I will begin. One of the things I really love about this book, The Star Whale, that we've created together, is the variety. Not just the variety of Petr's really, really, really beautiful pictures, but the variety of subjects that we've covered by accident. So there are quite big messages in here. So there are silly things and there are fun things, but there are also quite kind of important things about the natural world and about our relationship with it. And one of these is this page, which is called The Southern Ocean. It's got a bit of your garden in there. So this is Petr's beautiful picture, which is of a city being absolutely engulfed by the sea. And I wasn't really writing or thinking about climate change and sea level rise, but I was thinking about imagining that when you look out at a city is a landscape the same as a countryside or a wild scene as a landscape, and thinking about how when you look at a city landscape, through your eyelashes, through your eyes half closed, it could be all sorts of different things. And what I wanted to do with this poem was just to encourage readers to imagine, to think about the fact that even when you're in a city, the wild is out there, not so very far away and around us. But actually, in doing that, I was also, without realising it, doing something about climate change and changes in sea level.
This is actually very interesting because this is the very first time I hear you talking about it. But I grew up in Prague, on the outskirts of Prague, where the panel blocks were built at the time when I was little. So there was still kind of, and it was by the woods, and there was this nature meeting the kind of city taking over. And if you took a picture, you wouldn't know in which stage it is. Is the nature taking over, or is the city taking over nature? So actually, when I was growing up, I very often was actually imagining myself these kind of apocalyptic, what would happen if we are not here, and the trees grow through the houses, because that's what I've seen there, really. And so it wasn't too difficult to imagine. But anyway, it's very well, come on, that's very interesting how we meeting in the picture, in the story.
There's all sorts of instances through the book where there have been unexpected meetings of our pasts and our imaginations. But one of the things that I love about this page is just what you were saying about those liminal environments at the edge of the urban. And for children growing up in cities and in suburban areas, those little bits, little scraps of, forgotten gardens, roundabouts, all those sorts of places where nature just kind of wiggles its way in, are really important, and really magical. And they were magical for me too in my very early childhood, when I wasn't in the countryside, where actually I was in a fairly urban suburban situation, and those little bits of wild really kind of fired my imagination.
So this is a picture I wanted to mention as well, because I remember that I talked to you about goldfinch. That it was the very last thing I talked to my dad before he died. Just a couple of, I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
but
I do.
But I just saw goldfinches as I was cycling, and I told my dad about it, and we had a conversation, and it was one of the very last conversations we had. And I told you that, and then you wrote this beautiful poem, and about the goldfinch, and you also wanted to be the last poem in the book. So I don't know if you still remember that, or if it was
No, I do remember that. And goldfinches are really special for me too. When I was a little girl, I was a very solitary kid, and one of the places we lived in lots of different places, there was a corner of the garden where I could climb up into the top of a tree that had been cut down, and its branches had grown around the cut stump. And I could sit on the cut stump, peep out through the branches, and look at the teasels and thistles that were growing next door, and see goldfinches feeding, and look at every little detail of them, and they're so beautiful.
They are beautiful.
And the sound that they make is absolutely wonderful. And every time I hear that sound or see them, and you see, you know, I was listening to them while I was waiting for the bus to get to your house the other night. You just feel like you've been given a present. You just feel like you've been given this moment of absolute grace and beauty. And I think it's just the most lovely thing that the last conversation that you had with your daddy was about goldfinches.
It's been always like seeing a goldfinch. It's like it makes you immediately happy. I don't know what it is. It's just a second, and it's like another bird. It's kingfisher, isn't it? It's like it's just spotting a diamond, you know. But yeah, goldfinch definitely, and it's really lovely to have this poem and the picture as the last one in the book.
It is. It's perfect. It's the perfect ending. Perfect ending to the perfect book.